In the quiet expanse of the Scottish countryside, where the hills roll endlessly under a vast, starry sky, one might feel a certain connection to the land's mysterious past. Scotland, a land of ancient castles, mist-shrouded mountains, and rugged coastlines, has long been steeped in folklore and tales of the supernatural. The air is thick with stories passed down through generations, tales of fairies, ghosts, and the unexplained. But perhaps one of the most captivating mysteries that continues to pervade this historic land is not of creatures from ancient myths, but of strange, unidentifiable objects in the sky. UFO sightings in Scotland have become an undeniable part of the nation's modern folklore. From the windswept highlands to the coastal shores of the Western Isles, the question of whether Scotland's skies have been visited by extraterrestrial beings has lingered in the minds of locals and visitors alike. The enigmatic and often chilling reports of unexplained aerial phenomena have drawn the curious, the skeptical, and the brave into investigating the unknown. Many have tried to explain these strange sightings through rational theories, while others have embraced them as evidence of something beyond our world. This script will delve into 11 real, declassified UFO sightings that have occurred throughout Scotland's history. These accounts come not only from ordinary citizens, but also from credible professionals, pilots, police officers, and military personnel, whose encounters with unidentified flying objects defy easy explanation. The mystery of what they saw is not merely speculative. It is documented in government files, media reports, and first-hand testimonies. However, what makes these reports even more intriguing is the tension between the official accounts, which often dismiss these sightings as misidentified objects, and the descriptions provided by witnesses who insist that what they saw defied all logic. The land of Scotland is not unfamiliar with mystery. Its history is riddled with strange happenings, lost treasures, ancient secrets, and mysterious disappearances. Yet, it is the sightings in the skies that have recently captured public attention, with stories that echo the global phenomenon of UFO reports during the 20th century. Scotland's role in the international UFO conversation began in earnest in the post-World War II era, when the Cold War ushered in an age of heightened awareness of aerial phenomena, and the world began to wonder if they were alone in the vastness of space. It was at this time that the first substantial reports of unidentified flying objects in Scotland began to surface. Mysterious lights in the sky, objects moving in ways that defied human engineering, and encounters that often left witnesses perplexed, yet undeniably convinced of what they had experienced. One such witness was a former RAF pilot, who on a quiet evening in 1950, spotted a series of lights moving erratically over the Isle of Skye. His initial thoughts were that it could be a military aircraft or some sort of experimental technology, but the way the lights danced across the sky defied all known principles of flight. His report to the authorities, detailed with precision and clarity, was one of the first to be officially logged in government archives. Yet, despite the professionalism of the pilot and the credibility of his testimony, the official explanation was evasive at best and dismissive at worst. This set the stage for the countless other reports that followed, where credible witnesses would describe strange phenomena in the skies, only to be met with skepticism or indifference by the authorities. It's important to note that while these sightings were happening, the context in which they occurred shaped how they were understood by the public. The Cold War tensions that gripped the world in the 1950s and 1960s, along with the rise of nuclear weapons and the fear of espionage, created an environment in which any unexplained object in the sky could easily be dismissed as a Soviet aircraft, a weather balloon, or a military experiment. But the more credible the witnesses, those whose backgrounds and professions made them less likely to misinterpret what they saw, the more challenging it became to simply ignore or dismiss these reports. The mystery only deepened, as strange phenomena continued to be seen by people in all walks of life across the vast Scottish landscape. In this script, we will focus on the most compelling and well-documented UFO sightings in Scotland, using declassified files, media reports, and first-hand accounts to piece together the story of what truly occurred. We will hear from those who were there, witnesses who are still haunted by what they saw in the sky, and we will explore the psychological, social, and cultural forces that shape our understanding of the paranormal. We will delve into the contradictions between what the government reports and what the witnesses describe, creating a tension that leaves us questioning the nature of truth itself. Are these reports merely the result of overactive imaginations, hoaxes, or misidentifications? Or do they point to something greater, a force or intelligence beyond our understanding? As we journey through these real-life accounts, we will examine the implications of these sightings, not only for Scotland, but for the broader question of extraterrestrial life. Could it be that Scotland, with its long history of mystical events, has been a focal point for the kind of phenomena that challenge our understanding of reality? The idea that we may not be alone in the universe is both exhilarating and terrifying, and it is this delicate balance of wonder and fear that draws us into the heart of the mystery. The exploration of Scotland's declassified UFO sightings is not just a quest for answers. It is a journey into the unknown, where every answer only seems to lead to more questions. As we listen to these stories, we may begin to ask ourselves, what is it about the human experience that craves the unknown? Why are we so captivated by the possibility of visitors from other worlds? And perhaps most importantly, what does it mean for us as individuals and as a society to confront the mystery of the skies above? This script will not only provide an overview of these fascinating events, but also offer a reflection on the broader implications of UFO phenomena in our culture. It will invite us to question what we know, to confront the limits of our understanding, and to consider what lies beyond the stars. All of this, of course, while remaining grounded in the real, documented experiences of those who have witnessed the unexplainable in the skies above Scotland. So, as we begin this journey through the strange and captivating world of UFO sightings in Scotland, take a moment to relax. Let the stories unfold at their own pace, and allow the mystery to carry you into a space where the impossible might just become possible. Feel the curiosity stir, but let it soothe you too. Because, after all, this story is as much about exploration of the unknown as it is about quiet reflection, about understanding the mysteries that lie above us, and in doing so, finding peace in the pursuit of the extraordinary. Scotland, with its dramatic landscapes and ancient history, has long been a land of mystery and intrigue. From the shadowed depths of its forests to the eerie silence of its rugged highlands, Scotland has been a backdrop for stories of the unknown, stories of fairies, ghosts, and creatures that dwell just beyond the edge of reality. This rich tradition of folklore, handed down through generations, has shaped the cultural fabric of the country. Yet, while these tales have traditionally focused on spirits and otherworldly beings of the past, the skies above Scotland have become the setting for a more contemporary mystery, one that involves strange lights, mysterious craft, and the possibility of extraterrestrial visitors. Scotland's connection to the paranormal, particularly in relation to UFOs, is deeply intertwined with its history of mystical and supernatural beliefs. For centuries, the Scots have been steeped in a culture that embraces the possibility of the unknown. The country's vast isolated terrain, spanning from the bleak moors of the Highlands to the remote islands off its coast, has always been fertile ground for strange occurrences. These rural, isolated areas, far removed from the hustle and bustle of modern life, provide an ideal setting for stories of encounters with things that defy explanation. The Scots have long been fascinated with tales of otherworldly beings. Folklore is replete with stories of fey creatures, fairies, spirits, and other supernatural entities, who were said to reside in the uncharted spaces between the material world and the realms beyond. Ancient stone circles and mysterious cairns, such as those found at Callanish on the Isle of Lewis, are thought to be remnants of a forgotten culture's ritualistic practices, many of which were aimed at making contact with spirits or beings from other dimensions. While the notion of these otherworldly creatures may have seemed fantastical, it is not so far-fetched when considering the evolution of UFO sightings in the 20th century. What was once attributed to the supernatural began to be reframed as extraterrestrial encounters, blurring the line between folklore and modern mystery. The turning point in Scotland's modern UFO history came after World War II. The end of the war marked the beginning of the Cold War era, a time when the world was increasingly aware of the dangers of nuclear weapons and the potential threats posed by adversaries across the globe. As tensions rose between the United States and the Soviet Union, the skies became the subject of intense scrutiny. The appearance of strange lights or unidentified flying objects could no longer be written off as simple folklore. These sightings were becoming too numerous and consistent to be easily dismissed. One of the earliest and most significant events in Scotland's UFO history occurred in 1947, the same year as the infamous Kenneth Arnold sighting in the United States. In that year, several reports emerged from Scotland, detailing strange objects in the sky. Some witnesses described seeing bright lights, while others reported craft that seemed to move erratically or hover in place. For many people, the sightings came as a shock. The thought of beings from another world was not something that many had considered, at least not in the modern, scientific context of the mid-20th century. But with the increase in reports came a growing realization that something extraordinary might indeed be occurring above the Scottish landscape. The rise of UFO sightings in Scotland coincided with a larger global interest in UFOs. After Kenneth Arnold's now famous sighting in Washington state, in which he described seeing a series of saucer-shaped craft flying at high speeds, the phenomenon quickly captured the public imagination. Newspapers around the world began to report on sightings of flying saucers, and a new era of UFO enthusiasm was born. The term flying saucer quickly entered the popular lexicon, and the world began to question whether we were alone in the universe. It was within this context that the first significant UFO sightings in Scotland began to be reported. A notable example occurred in 1950 when a former RAF pilot who had been flying over the Isle of Skye saw strange lights darting across the sky. Initially, the pilot thought the lights might be other aircraft, but the movement was unlike anything he had seen before. The lights performed maneuvers that defied the laws of aerodynamics. Rapid changes in direction, sudden stops, and accelerations that no known aircraft could perform at the time. The pilot reported the sighting to local authorities, but the official response was dismissive. The lights were chalked up to a series of natural phenomena, such as the reflection of lights from nearby ships or atmospheric distortions. This encounter on the Isle of Skye was one of the first of many that would follow, each increasing in both frequency and intensity. As the 1950s progressed, sightings of strange lights and objects in the sky became commonplace. Throughout Scotland, people began to report seeing craft that defied explanation. Some witnesses claimed to have seen saucer-shaped crafts. Others spoke of cigar-shaped objects or spherical lights that seemed to be monitoring the landscape below. These reports came from all walks of life: farmers, fishermen, police officers, and military personnel. In fact, one of the most well-documented sightings occurred in 1962 when a Scottish police officer, who was patrolling the remote Highland roads, observed a large object hovering silently over the countryside. The officer reported the sighting to his superiors, but like many others, his account was met with skepticism and derision. However, despite the dismissive responses from official sources, the sheer number and consistency of these reports gave them an air of credibility. Eyewitnesses, especially those in rural areas, were often well-respected members of the community. These were not people prone to flights of fancy or prone to exaggeration. Many of the reports came from individuals with no previous interest in UFOs, making it difficult to dismiss them as hoaxes or overactive imaginations. In addition to the sheer volume of sightings, the nature of the phenomena described also contributed to their mysteriousness. Unlike conventional aircraft, many of the objects described by witnesses appeared to defy the laws of physics. The sudden changes in direction, the hovering, the speeds that no known aircraft could achieve, all of these elements added to the growing mystery. For the residents of Scotland, the sky was no longer a place of solitude and beauty. It had become a canvas for something far more enigmatic. By the time the 1970s arrived, Scotland had become a focal point for UFO activity. The government, though largely dismissive of the phenomenon, was nonetheless compelled to begin documenting these sightings. In 1979, the UK Ministry of Defence (MOD) started to release files on UFO sightings, some of which had occurred in Scotland. These files revealed a growing body of evidence that suggested that UFO sightings were not limited to remote areas, but were also occurring near military bases and densely populated urban centers. For many, these revelations only deepened the mystery. What was the connection between these sightings and military activity? Were these craft from another world, or were they something more terrestrial, perhaps advanced technology being tested by secretive governments? As the years passed, Scotland continued to be a hotspot for UFO activity. Sightings became more frequent in the 1980s and 1990s, often coinciding with increased public interest in UFOs and extraterrestrial life. The global fascination with alien visitors, fueled by books, films, and documentaries, made it impossible to ignore the growing number of sightings. Yet, despite this increasing interest, the official response remained largely unchanged. UFOs were still largely dismissed as either hoaxes or natural phenomena. It is against this rich historical backdrop that the declassified UFO sightings in Scotland take on new significance. The blending of Scotland's ancient folklore with the more modern mystery of UFOs creates a fascinating narrative, a narrative that challenges the boundaries of our understanding and forces us to confront the possibility that there may be more to the skies above us than we ever thought possible. When it comes to understanding UFO phenomena, there is no substitute for the testimonies of those who have had direct encounters. Eyewitness accounts form the core of many investigations into the paranormal, especially when these accounts come from credible, trustworthy individuals who have no prior interest in UFOs or extraterrestrial beings. These reports, often dismissed or downplayed by authorities, are vital pieces of the puzzle. They offer a perspective grounded in reality, providing personal insights into what many would consider an impossible experience. In Scotland, there have been numerous UFO sightings over the decades, some of which have been officially recorded and declassified by government agencies. These sightings span a variety of locations, from the remote highlands to the more populated areas of central Scotland, each one adding to the growing mystery of the nation's connection to unexplained aerial phenomena. Below, we'll delve into 11 of the most compelling and well-documented UFO sightings in Scotland, all of which were backed by declassified files or first-hand eyewitness accounts. The first of these sightings took place in 1950, just 3 years after the global surge in UFO reports following World War II. It occurred on the Isle of Skye, one of Scotland's most isolated and scenic locations. On a calm evening, a former RAF pilot was flying over the island when he noticed a series of bright lights in the sky. Initially, the pilot assumed the lights were from military aircraft conducting exercises. However, as the lights moved erratically, changing direction abruptly, darting back and forth at speed that far exceeded any conventional aircraft, the pilot was left dumbfounded. His account, submitted to authorities, described the objects as not of this world. Despite the clear professionalism of the witness, the report was largely ignored, with authorities suggesting that the lights were merely a result of atmospheric conditions or misidentified conventional aircraft. Another notable sighting occurred in 1962 in the Highlands, where a local police officer was on his nightly patrol when he observed a large, glowing object hovering low over the hills. The officer initially attempted to radio in a report, but the object moved silently and quickly, vanishing into the distance before he could get any closer. He noted that the craft exhibited no conventional flight characteristics. It neither made any noise nor emitted a visible exhaust trail, unlike typical aircraft of the time. Upon reporting the incident to his superiors, the officer was told it was likely just a weather balloon or military test, despite the obvious discrepancies in his description. His testimony remains one of the more intriguing accounts, particularly because it comes from an experienced, no-nonsense law enforcement officer, whose role in society made him unlikely to fabricate such a claim. In 1977, a family vacationing in the remote village of Glen Lyon in central Scotland became the next witnesses to an extraordinary event. The family was sitting outside their cabin one evening when they noticed an unusual object hovering in the sky. The object, described as disc-shaped and emitting a bright white light, hovered silently before moving in a series of unpredictable patterns. The family's attempt to photograph the object proved futile, as their cameras malfunctioned at the moment of the sighting. The family members later described the object as moving in a manner that no known aircraft could replicate. The case was investigated by local authorities, but the only conclusion reached was that the family may have witnessed a misidentified conventional aircraft, despite the lack of evidence supporting this theory. One of the most well-known UFO sightings in Scotland occurred in 1990, just north of Edinburgh, when a group of people reported seeing a craft descend from the sky and land in a field. The sighting was reported by several independent witnesses, including a well-respected local businessman and a schoolteacher. They all described seeing a metallic, disc-shaped object that appeared to land and then take off again without making any sound. The object was observed for several minutes, and one witness even noted that it seemed to change shape before rapidly ascending into the sky. Local authorities were again called in to investigate, but they were unable to locate any physical evidence of the object's presence, such as landing marks or debris. Some investigators have suggested that the witnesses might have been victims of a collective illusion or hoax, but the consistency of their accounts makes it difficult to dismiss. Another important case took place in 1992, when a group of military personnel stationed at a remote radar base near the border of Scotland and England reported seeing a fast-moving object on their radar screens. The personnel, all of whom were trained to identify military aircraft, initially thought the object was a malfunction or an error in the radar system. However, the object remained on the radar screen for an extended period and moved in a manner inconsistent with the characteristics of any known aircraft. The crew attempted to visually locate the object, but were unable to spot it. The radar data was later reviewed by independent investigators, who could not explain the object's movements. Although no physical sighting was made, the radar data alone made this one of the most compelling cases in the region. In 1995, another intriguing event took place in the small fishing village of Plockton, located on the west coast of the Scottish Highlands. Several residents reported seeing a series of flashing lights in the sky that seemed to be part of a larger, more structured object. The lights were seen moving slowly across the sky before rapidly accelerating and disappearing into the horizon. Witnesses described the lights as blinking in a pattern that did not resemble any known aircraft or weather phenomenon. The sighting was reported to local authorities and was investigated by the Scottish UFO network, SOFAN. Although no definitive conclusion was drawn, the consistency of the reports and the large number of witnesses made it one of the most significant cases in the region during the 1990s. In 2004, a fisherman on the island of Mull reported seeing a large, cylindrical object hovering just above the water. The object, described as metallic and emitting a faint glow, remained stationary for several minutes before quickly ascending into the sky. The fisherman was able to photograph the object, and the photos were later analyzed by experts, who could not identify the object based on conventional aircraft models. The fisherman, who had been on the water for many years, stated that he had never seen anything remotely similar to the object in his extensive experience. His testimony, along with the photographic evidence, added another layer of credibility to the growing number of sightings in Scotland. Perhaps the most compelling sighting of the 21st century occurred in 2007 near the town of Inverness in the Scottish Highlands. A group of tourists who were visiting the region to explore the local history reported seeing a large object hovering over the town. The object, which appeared to be disc-shaped, was seen by several members of the group, who later gave remarkably consistent descriptions of the event. One witness, a professional photographer, even managed to capture several images of the object as it hovered silently above the town. The photos, which were analyzed by experts, showed an object that appeared to be solid and metallic in nature. Despite extensive media coverage, the incident was never fully explained. These 11 sightings, spanning nearly 6 decades, demonstrate a remarkable consistency in witness testimony, even as the world has evolved and technology has advanced. The witnesses to these events came from a wide range of professions and backgrounds, and their reports were consistent in their descriptions of the objects, objects that exhibited extraordinary capabilities, defying the known laws of physics. Despite these consistent and credible reports, the official response to these sightings has largely been one of dismissal. In many cases, authorities have offered explanations that seem to ignore the testimonies of those who saw the objects firsthand. The declassification of government files related to UFO sightings in Scotland has brought these cases back into the public consciousness. These files, once hidden away in dusty archives, now reveal the long-standing interest and investigation into UFO phenomena by military and governmental agencies. The official narrative, however, remains largely skeptical, often attributing sightings to misidentified aircraft, whether balloons or other mundane explanations. Yet the testimonies of these witnesses, along with the declassified documents, provide a compelling argument for the existence of something far stranger and more enigmatic. As we listen to these first-hand accounts, it becomes clear that something extraordinary may be unfolding in the skies over Scotland. Each sighting, each encounter, adds another layer to the mystery. And while many questions remain unanswered, one thing is certain: the phenomenon is real, and the search for answers continues. Despite the growing number of eyewitness accounts and declassified documents, the response from both the Scottish government and the media to UFO sightings in Scotland has been largely skeptical, dismissive, and often contradictory. Over the decades, these entities have played a significant role in shaping public perception, often downplaying or rationalizing unexplained aerial phenomena in a manner that undermines the credibility of witnesses and fails to address the deeper questions these sightings raise. Yet, as these reports continue to accumulate, the contrast between official explanations and the lived experiences of those who have witnessed UFOs becomes ever more apparent. One of the most significant ways in which the government has responded to UFO sightings is through the Ministry of Defense MOD, which for many years oversaw the investigation of UFO reports across the UK. The MOD's stance on UFOs has been one of cautious neutrality, combined with a consistent effort to suppress public interest and downplay the significance of sightings. In fact, it wasn't until the late 20th century that the MOD began releasing files related to UFO sightings, and even then, the information shared was often fragmented, heavily redacted, or inconclusive. For instance, in 1999, the UK government declassified a series of UFO-related documents that included a number of reports from Scotland. These documents revealed that the MOD had investigated several high-profile UFO sightings, including some involving credible witnesses, such as police officers, military personnel, and airline pilots. However, the MOD's conclusions were typically unsatisfactory. They often attributed the sightings to natural phenomena, misidentified aircraft, or classified military projects. In one particular case, the MOD labeled a series of sightings in the 1980s over the Highlands as the result of atmospheric conditions and light refraction, despite the clear and consistent descriptions of the objects from multiple eyewitnesses. This approach was not unique to the UK. Governments across the world have often been reluctant to acknowledge the existence of extraterrestrial life or the reality of UFOs, even in the face of mounting evidence. The United States, for example, spent decades denying the legitimacy of UFO sightings and dismissing witnesses as unreliable or misinformed. The phenomenon was often relegated to the realm of conspiracy theories, with officials stating that UFO sightings were simply the result of hoaxes, mass hysteria, or mistaken identification of conventional aircraft. This tendency to deny or dismiss UFO phenomena has left many to question whether there is a concerted effort by governments to conceal the truth, or whether the reluctance to address these sightings stems from a genuine inability to explain them. In Scotland, the government's response to UFO sightings has often mirrored the UK's broader approach. Despite numerous credible reports, including sightings by police officers, military personnel, and even members of Parliament, the official line has been to downplay the significance of these events. One notable example occurred in 1990, when a group of witnesses in the area north of Edinburgh reported seeing a large object land in a field. The craft was described as metallic, disc-shaped, and capable of rapid ascent. The witnesses, a businessman, a teacher, and other independent observers, gave remarkably consistent accounts, yet the Scottish police and the mob both suggested that the sighting could have been a misidentified military aircraft or an optical illusion caused by atmospheric conditions. Despite the lack of any plausible explanation that matched the witnesses' descriptions, the incident was officially dismissed. The media, too, has played a significant role in shaping the public's perception of UFOs in Scotland. While there have been occasional instances of responsible journalism, much of the coverage surrounding UFO sightings has been sensationalized or trivialized. Throughout the 20th century, newspapers and television programs often depicted UFOs as either a source of amusement or a cause for panic, with little regard for the serious implications that such encounters might have. In the 1950s and 1960s, when UFO sightings were at their peak, the media often portrayed them as a form of entertainment, fueling the public's fascination with flying saucers, but also feeding into the stigma that anyone who reported a UFO sighting was either gullible, mistaken, or intentionally fabricating the experience. The portrayal of UFOs in the media often reinforced the stereotype of the crazy witness, further discouraging people from coming forward with their own experiences. This culture of ridicule, combined with the official denials from government bodies, created an environment where UFO sightings were dismissed as something not worthy of serious attention. As a result, many witnesses felt compelled to remain silent, afraid of being labeled as delusional or attention-seeking. The media's portrayal of UFO phenomena as either a joke or a conspiracy theory also contributed to the broader cultural stigma surrounding UFOs. For years, mainstream television and newspapers treated UFO sightings with a mix of skepticism and mockery, rarely exploring the possibility that these events might be genuine and deserving of serious investigation. However, this narrative began to shift in the 1990s and 2000s, as the rise of the internet and a more open culture of information sharing allowed individuals to access a broader range of perspectives. The increasing declassification of government documents, particularly from the MOD, revealed the depth of the government's interest in UFOs, even if their conclusions were still unsatisfactory. Media outlets, particularly those with a focus on investigative journalism, began to take UFO sightings more seriously. In Scotland, this led to more in-depth coverage of incidents that had previously been ignored or dismissed. Local news stations and independent reporters started to interview witnesses, explore the implications of these sightings, and demand further investigation from the authorities. One pivotal moment in the media's response to UFOs occurred in 2007, when the BBC aired a documentary on the UK's UFO files, including several from Scotland. The documentary revealed several high-profile cases, some of which had been kept from the public for decades. The revelations of these declassified documents stirred public interest and led to renewed discussions about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Despite the increased media coverage, however, many of the fundamental questions surrounding these sightings remained unanswered. Even as the media and the public began to take the phenomenon more seriously, the government remained cautious, offering no definitive answers and providing only the most minimal of explanations. One of the reasons for the lack of conclusive explanations is the complexity of the phenomenon itself. UFO sightings in Scotland, like those in other parts of the world, often involve strange, unexplainable features that defy easy categorization. These include rapid changes in speed, sharp turns, sudden appearances and disappearances, and objects that exhibit no visible means of propulsion. The sheer variety of these sightings, along with the consistency of the witnesses' accounts, has made it difficult for authorities to offer a singular, coherent explanation. Yet, instead of addressing the mystery head-on, the official response has often been to dismiss the reports with vague, unsubstantiated explanations. The ongoing disparity between official accounts and public perceptions highlights a fundamental issue: the reluctance of authorities to fully confront the UFO phenomenon. For many years, both the government and the media have perpetuated a narrative of skepticism and dismissal, leaving witnesses to feel as though their experiences were invalid or irrelevant. This has led to a complex dynamic where the public's curiosity about UFOs has grown, even as the official response remains cold and unwelcoming. It is only in recent years, with the declassification of further files and the rise of independent UFO researchers and enthusiasts, that Scotland's UFO sightings have gained more mainstream attention. However, the official narrative of skepticism continues to persist. Whether driven by a desire to avoid panic, protect classified information, or simply a lack of understanding, the government's refusal to acknowledge the full scope of the UFO phenomenon leaves many questions unanswered. At the same time, the media's cautious shift toward a more serious exploration of UFO sightings has created a space for public curiosity. But the true nature of these encounters remains as elusive as ever. Ultimately, the ongoing tension between government responses, media portrayals, and eyewitness accounts contributes to the enduring mystery of Scotland's UFO sightings. While the government may continue to dismiss or downplay these incidents, the testimonies of those who have witnessed unexplained phenomena in the skies above Scotland continue to call for a deeper investigation. The challenge remains. As we move forward into an era of increased transparency and public interest, will the truth finally emerge, or will the divide between official explanations and public perception continue to widen? As the decades have passed and the number of UFO sightings in Scotland continues to grow, so too have the theories surrounding these mysterious events. While the official stance from the government and many mainstream media outlets has been one of skepticism, an alternative narrative has begun to emerge. This narrative is centered around the possibility that the UFO phenomenon is not just about extraterrestrial visitors or experimental aircraft, but something much more complex and far-reaching. In this section, we will explore the alternative and paranormal theories that have arisen in response to Scotland's UFO sightings, each providing a different lens through which to interpret these mysterious encounters. One of the most popular and persistent alternative theories surrounding UFO sightings in Scotland, and indeed globally, is the idea that UFOs are not necessarily extraterrestrial in origin, but may instead be linked to interdimensional or time travel phenomena. According to this theory, the UFOs that people observe may not be coming from other planets or distant star systems at all. Instead, they could be coming from alternate dimensions or timelines, interacting with our world in ways that are beyond our current understanding of physics and the nature of reality. Proponents of the interdimensional theory often point to the strange behavior of UFOs, which frequently exhibit characteristics that defy conventional laws of motion. In many sightings, the craft seem to appear and disappear at will, moving in ways that no known aircraft or spacecraft can replicate. These objects often move in sharp, erratic patterns, change direction suddenly, and accelerate at speeds that no human-made technology could achieve. The idea behind the interdimensional theory is that these crafts are not necessarily traveling through space as we understand it, but rather slipping through a tear in the fabric of time and space, appearing in our dimension for brief moments before disappearing again. This theory has gained traction in recent years, particularly with the rise of quantum physics and the study of parallel universes. The concept of parallel worlds, first proposed in the early 20th century by physicists such as Hugh Everett III, suggests that our universe may be just one of many, existing alongside countless others in a multiverse. In this context, UFOs could be seen as visitors from another dimension or even from a future version of our own timeline. Some theorists suggest that these interdimensional visitors might not even be fully aware of the impact they have on our world. Their brief interactions with our reality may be the result of unintentional glitches in the multiverse, rather than deliberate exploration or invasion. While this theory is certainly speculative, it does offer a compelling explanation for some of the more inexplicable aspects of UFO sightings. The idea that these craft could be slipping in and out of our dimension, momentarily appearing before vanishing again, could account for the fleeting nature of many UFO encounters. It also provides a framework for understanding why these objects often appear in rural or remote areas, such as the Scottish Highlands, where the boundary between different dimensions might be more easily crossed due to the relative isolation of the location. Another theory that has emerged in the wake of Scotland's UFO sightings is the possibility that these phenomena are the result of advanced military technology, either of human or non-human origin. This theory is often referred to as the black budget theory, which posits that the UFOs seen by civilians are in fact highly classified, experimental aircraft developed by military or intelligence agencies. According to this theory, the governments of the world have been secretly working on cutting-edge aerospace technology for decades, and some of the UFO sightings in Scotland could be the result of secret military tests or operations that were never intended for public knowledge. The idea that UFOs are not extraterrestrial, but rather a product of advanced military technology has a long history, dating back to the early days of the UFO phenomenon. Some theorists argue that sightings of flying saucers and other unexplained craft during the 1940s and 1950s were the result of early Cold War-era experiments, possibly involving reverse-engineered alien technology. Over the years, there have been several reports of UFO sightings near military bases in Scotland, including some that describe strange aircraft performing maneuvers that no known human technology could replicate. These reports, combined with the government's reluctance to release information about military projects, have fueled speculation that many UFO sightings are actually the result of classified military aircraft or experimental technologies. A particularly interesting case in Scotland that supports this theory occurred in the early 1980s near the Royal Navy's nuclear submarine base in Faslane. Several witnesses, including military personnel, reported seeing a large, dark object hovering over the water near the base. The object was described as having a peculiar shape and exhibited flight patterns that were consistent with those observed in many UFO sightings. While the witnesses were quick to suggest that the object was not of extraterrestrial origin, many were left to wonder whether it was an advanced military craft, possibly one that had been developed as part of a secret project. However, despite the intriguing nature of the report, no official explanation was ever provided, and the incident remains one of the more enigmatic UFO encounters in Scotland's history. Another interesting theory that has gained traction in recent years is the idea that UFO sightings could be linked to ancient alien visitations or ancient astronauts. According to this theory, extraterrestrial beings may have visited Earth thousands or even millions of years ago, and their influence can still be seen in ancient monuments, religious iconography, and cultural traditions. Proponents of the ancient astronaut theory point to a variety of archaeological sites in Scotland, such as the stone circles at Callanish and the mysterious burial mounds found across the Highlands, as evidence of a lost, ancient civilization that may have had contact with extraterrestrial visitors. The theory of ancient aliens suggests that advanced beings from other worlds may have played a role in shaping human civilization, providing knowledge, technology, and perhaps even genetic manipulation. While there is no direct evidence linking the ancient aliens theory to UFO sightings in modern-day Scotland, some theorists believe that the continued presence of UFOs in the skies above the country could be a continuation of these ancient visits. The idea is that these extraterrestrial visitors have maintained an interest in Scotland throughout history, possibly due to the presence of ancient energy sites or portals that allow for easier travel between worlds. Some even argue that these visitors may have played a role in the development of ancient Scottish mythology, with gods and spirits from ancient Celtic beliefs potentially being linked to extraterrestrial beings. Finally, another alternative theory that has gained popularity among UFO enthusiasts is the concept of a UFO phenomenon that is not strictly extraterrestrial or interdimensional, but is part of a larger, more profound understanding of consciousness. This theory suggests that UFOs and other paranormal phenomena are not physical objects at all, but are manifestations of the human mind or collective unconscious. According to this theory, UFOs are not material craft from distant worlds, but are psychological or spiritual experiences that are somehow projected into our reality. This idea has roots in the work of Carl Jung, who suggested that the UFO phenomenon could be understood as an archetype of the collective unconscious, representing humanity's deep-seated fears and desires for contact with the unknown. Some contemporary researchers, such as Jacques Vallée, have expanded on this idea, proposing that UFOs might be a form of psychic phenomenon or a manifestation of altered states of consciousness. According to Valet and others, these sightings might not involve tangible extraterrestrials at all, but rather a form of interaction with the mind itself, an interaction that transcends our current understanding of reality. While these theories may seem speculative or even far-fetched, they offer fascinating and thought-provoking alternatives to the conventional extraterrestrial hypothesis. They challenge us to reconsider the nature of the UFO phenomenon and open up new possibilities for understanding these mysterious encounters. As with all theories, the truth may lie somewhere in between, with elements of each explanation playing a role in the complex and multifaceted phenomenon that is UFOs. Scotland, a land of ancient history and rich folklore, has long been a cultural touchstone for stories of the supernatural. The country's mythology, steeped in centuries of tradition, offers a lens through which modern phenomena, such as UFO sightings, can be interpreted and understood. From the myths of the Celtic gods to the stories of spectral beings that haunt the misty glens and ancient castles, Scotland has fostered a cultural environment where the supernatural is woven into the very fabric of the land. These deep-rooted stories have influenced the way that both locals and outsiders view UFOs, often linking these modern sightings to ancient tales of otherworldly beings, fae, and mystical forces. At the heart of Scotland's folklore is the belief in the fae, or the fairy realm, a hidden dimension populated by beings that exist just beyond the reach of the human world. According to ancient Celtic beliefs, the fae were powerful and enigmatic figures, sometimes benevolent, sometimes malevolent, who could appear in human form or as supernatural creatures. They were said to dwell in sacred places, such as standing stones, hills, and ancient forests, and their presence was often marked by strange lights or unexplained phenomena. These tales of otherworldly beings have persisted for centuries, shaping Scotland's cultural landscape and influencing how UFO sightings are perceived today. Interestingly, the stories surrounding the fae often bear striking similarities to modern UFO reports. Many witnesses of UFO sightings describe seeing strange lights in the sky or encounters with unidentifiable beings, often in rural or isolated locations. Some have even noted that the movements of these objects or creatures resemble the erratic flight patterns described in ancient fairy lore. The idea that UFOs could be linked to these ancient supernatural forces is not a new one. In fact, some UFO researchers have argued that the phenomenon could be a continuation of these older beliefs, suggesting that modern UFOs are a manifestation of ancient myths, reinterpreted through the lens of contemporary science and technology. The concept of portals or gateways is another element of Scottish folklore that finds echoes in modern UFO sightings. In many Celtic myths, certain locations were believed to serve as entry points to other realms, places where the veil between the human world and the supernatural world was thin. These locations, such as ancient stone circles, burial mounds, and sacred wells, were thought to be places where humans could make contact with otherworldly beings or even travel to different dimensions. These ideas of portals and gateways have resonated with UFO researchers who believe that some UFO sightings may be linked to interdimensional travel or the crossing of boundaries between different realms of existence. In this context, the UFO phenomenon might not just be about visitors from other planets, but could also involve beings from other planes of reality, interacting with our world in ways that defy explanation. The belief in otherworldly visitors is not limited to the fae. Scotland's mythology also features numerous stories of beings from the sky, gods, spirits, and creatures that descend from the heavens. One of the most famous figures in Scottish myth is the god Cu Chulainn, a warrior whose legendary feats were often attributed to his connection with the sky and the celestial realms. The ancient Scots believed that their gods resided in the sky, descending to earth in times of need. This idea of celestial beings interacting with the earth could have influenced the modern conception of UFOs as visitors from the stars. The notion of gods descending from the sky is not unique to Scottish mythology. Across ancient cultures, similar stories can be found, from the Greek gods descending from Mount Olympus to the Sumerian gods who were believed to have arrived in flying ships. These cross-cultural stories of gods and otherworldly beings visiting Earth can be seen as precursors to modern UFO myths. In this context, it is possible to view UFOs not just as alien visitors, but as celestial beings, beings that have long been a part of humanity's collective consciousness, now reinterpreted through the modern lens of space exploration and extraterrestrial life. The cultural influence of these myths extends beyond folklore and ancient stories. Scotland's landscape, its remote hills, dense forests, and wind-swept coastlines, has long been a place of mystery and legend. Many of the most famous UFO sightings in Scotland have occurred in rural, isolated areas, often near ancient sites or places of historical significance. For example, the famous 1990 sighting north of Edinburgh, in which a group of witnesses observed a large, disc-shaped craft hovering in a field, took place near an area rich in prehistoric monuments and standing stones. These ancient sites, which are steeped in mystery and legend, have long been associated with otherworldly beings and supernatural forces. The idea that UFOs could be connected to these ancient places, which have been sacred to generations of Scots, fits within the broader cultural framework of Scotland's spiritual and supernatural traditions. The visual similarities between UFOs and certain aspects of Scottish folklore are striking. Many of the descriptions of UFOs, particularly those involving glowing lights, hovering objects, and craft that exhibit unusual flight patterns, bear a strong resemblance to ancient accounts of otherworldly visitations. For instance, the use of light in both UFO sightings and stories of the Fae is particularly notable. In many fairy tales, the Fae are said to appear in a flash of light or to be surrounded by glowing orbs. This glowing light is often associated with their magical powers and their ability to move between worlds. Similarly, UFOs are frequently described as emitting a bright, often otherworldly light, which many witnesses say appears to be an integral part of the phenomenon. This connection between light and the supernatural can also be found in the mythology of the will-o'-the-wisp, a phenomenon that has been reported in various parts of Scotland, particularly in the Highlands. The will-o'-the-wisp is a mysterious, glowing light that is said to appear in marshes, forests, and other damp, isolated areas. According to folklore, the will-o'-the-wisp is the spirit of a lost soul, luring travelers off the beaten path. This eerie, glowing light bears a striking resemblance to the lights often reported in UFO sightings, and the association between these lights and the supernatural realm is a theme that runs deep in Scottish folklore. As Scotland's folklore continues to influence modern perceptions of UFOs, it is important to consider the role of the collective consciousness in shaping these beliefs. Throughout history, people have sought to make sense of the unknown by interpreting it through the lens of their own cultural and spiritual traditions. This is why the UFO phenomenon in Scotland is so often tied to ancient myths and legends. The appearance of UFOs, particularly in remote and isolated areas, evokes a sense of mystery and wonder that harkens back to Scotland's ancient past, a time when the boundary between the known and the unknown was much thinner. The stories of Fae gods and other supernatural beings that were once told around hearths and passed down through generations continue to shape our understanding of the world today, providing a framework for interpreting the mysteries that still persist in the skies above Scotland. In many ways, the UFO phenomenon in Scotland can be seen as a continuation of these ancient stories, stories that reflect humanity's deep-seated desire to explore the unknown and make contact with the otherworldly. As we try to understand the strange lights in the sky and the mysterious objects that defy explanation, we are also reconnecting with the age-old myths that have shaped Scotland's cultural identity for centuries. In this sense, UFOs are not just a modern phenomenon, but a modern manifestation of the ancient stories and beliefs that have shaped Scotland's cultural and spiritual landscape. As Scotland's UFO sightings continue to capture the public's imagination, the blending of modern mystery and ancient myth suggests that our understanding of the phenomenon is still evolving. Whether we view UFOs as extraterrestrial visitors, interdimensional travelers, or something more spiritual, the influence of Scotland's rich cultural heritage remains an essential part of the narrative. The question of what lies behind these strange lights in the sky may not have a simple answer, but the enduring connection between Scotland's myths and the UFO phenomenon reminds us that sometimes the answers we seek are shaped not just by science and reason, but by the collective imagination and the stories we continue to tell. In recent years, there has been a marked shift in the way UFO sightings are investigated, both in Scotland and around the world. No longer is the phenomenon viewed as something relegated to conspiracy theorists or dismissed as mere figments of overactive imaginations. With the increasing availability of technology, the rise of independent research organizations, and a more open public discourse on the topic, UFOs have become a subject of serious inquiry and investigation. This shift is not only evident in the mainstream media, but also within the scientific community and among local investigators who are dedicated to uncovering the truth behind Scotland's long history of mysterious sightings. One of the most significant changes in modern UFO research is the increased use of technology to capture, document, and analyze UFO sightings. In the past, most UFO reports were based solely on eyewitness testimony, which, while important, was often dismissed as unreliable. However, with the advent of high-definition cameras, smartphones, drones, and other surveillance equipment, it is now easier than ever to capture visual evidence of strange objects in the sky. Scotland, with its vast rural landscapes and clear open skies, has become a hotspot for UFO enthusiasts and investigators armed with the latest technology, hoping to capture compelling footage that could shed light on the mystery of the phenomenon. In 2007, for example, a sighting near the small Scottish village of Tain made headlines when several residents, including a local farmer and a retired military officer, reported seeing a large, disc-shaped object hovering over the town. What set this sighting apart from others was that one of the witnesses, a professional photographer, managed to capture a series of high-resolution images of the object. The photos, which were later analyzed by independent experts, showed a craft with distinct, metallic features and an eerie glow. Despite the skepticism from some quarters, the photos were compelling enough to warrant further investigation. This sighting, along with others that followed, has contributed to the growing interest in UFO research in Scotland, with more people coming forward to share their experiences and more researchers dedicating themselves to studying the phenomenon. Independent organizations, such as the Scottish UFO Network (SUFON), have played a crucial role in gathering and investigating UFO reports in Scotland. Founded in the late 1990s, SUFON is one of the UK's leading UFO research groups, with a particular focus on Scotland's rich history of sightings. The organization works to collect and document eyewitness accounts, providing a platform for individuals to report their experiences in a safe and confidential environment. SUFON also conducts investigations into reported sightings, often interviewing witnesses, reviewing photographic or video evidence, and examining the surrounding area for any physical evidence of unusual activity. One of the key roles that SUFON and other organizations play is that of debunking hoaxes and misidentifications.